The mug on the counter had a chipped rim, and the smell of burnt coffee clung to it like guilt. It was almost midnight, and the buzzing of the fridge filled the silence I'd been avoiding for hours. My phone lit up again. Unknown number, but I already knew who it was. The county jail doesn't show names. The same number had been calling since 7:42, ever since my sister texted me that Mom had been arrested. I didn't pick up. My name is Eli Warren, 33, HVAC tech out of St. Cloud, Minnesota. I live alone in a duplex that smells faintly of coolant and reheated takeout. Most nights, I come home, crack open a cheap beer, and scroll until the blue light hurts my eyes. But that night, I stared at my phone like it was a loaded gun, because picking up meant opening a door I'd spent the last 6 years nailing shut. The last time Mom and I spoke, it ended with her standing in the rain outside my shop, shaking, begging me not to say the things I said. I told her I didn't owe her anything anymore. Not after the way she'd left us, me and my sister Hannah, to patch things together after Dad's breakdown. She'd called it self-preservation. I called it abandonment. So when the message came, Mom's in jail, I felt something dark rise in me. Not shock, not fear. Just that small, bitter satisfaction that life had finally caught up to her. But by the time I went to bed, that feeling had turned to a cold ache I couldn't name. I didn't sleep. Around 3 in the morning, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, reading through old texts. The last one from her was 3 years old. Happy birthday, Eli. I know you hate me, but I still love you. No emoji, no punctuation, just that flat line of text. I deleted it again, like it was some ritual I kept repeating. By sunrise, I had 3 missed calls and 1 voicemail from the county jail. I didn't listen. I showered, shaved, and drove to a job in Sauk Rapids, pretending I didn't feel like a coward. But when I got there, the homeowner, an older guy with an oxygen tank, started talking about his own son, who doesn't visit anymore. I tightened a copper line until my knuckles went white. At lunch, Hannah called. Eli, please, she said, voice cracking through the static. They're saying Mom's still there. She needs someone to sign for her release. She's not my problem, I said. She took the blame, Eli, she said, her tone suddenly sharper. They said it was her signature on the lease. What lease? There was a long pause. I can't say over the phone. Just, please, go down there. I hung up, because I knew if I let her keep talking, I might give in. It wasn't until the next night that I finally cracked. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was the sound of the fridge again, same hum, same tone, that broke the silence like a confession booth. I got in my truck and drove to Benton County Jail. It was cold, the kind of Minnesota chill that creeps into your wrists and never leaves. Inside, the fluorescent lights made everyone look like ghosts. The officer at the desk, a woman with a buzz cut and a kind of practiced exhaustion, looked up. Name? She said. Eli Warren. My mother, Margaret Warren. She's here. She typed something. The keyboard clicks echoed like judgment. She's eligible for release, but she's refusing to leave. What? She says she's waiting for her son. I felt something twist in my chest. Can I see her? She studied me for a moment, then nodded toward a side door. 15 minutes. The holding room was small. Concrete walls, plastic chairs, a sheet of glass that felt thicker than it needed to be. When they brought her in, she looked smaller than I remembered. The last time I saw Mom, she'd still had color in her cheeks, blonde streaks in her hair. Now her face was pale, and her hands trembled as she sat down across from me. Eli, she whispered through the receiver. Mom, you came. I almost didn't. She smiled, tiny, tired. That sounds like you. I didn't know what to say. I'd rehearsed 100 speeches. How she'd ruined Dad. How she'd left us when the bank took the house. How she'd lied about rehab. But all of it evaporated. What did you do? I finally asked. She took a long breath. It's not what you think. That's not an answer. I signed something I shouldn't have. For who? She hesitated, eyes flicking away. Does it matter? Yeah, I said, leaning closer. It matters. There was a pause so long I thought she'd hang up. Then she said it, softly, like she was confessing to a priest. For you. I felt my stomach drop. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice too loud for the room. She pressed her hand to the glass. That lease you had back in 2018, the one for the shop on Division Street, they came after me. Said my name was on the papers. That's impossible. You were behind on payments, Eli. They were threatening to sue. You remember what your father's name was worth back then? Nothing. I thought I could fix it. I couldn't breathe. Back then, I was 26, trying to start a one-man HVAC business after getting laid off. The lease was a disaster. I'd missed payments, sure, but I never thought she'd touch it. Why didn't you tell me? She gave a small broken laugh. Would you have listened? I wanted to yell, to accuse, but something in her face stopped me. The same exhausted kindness she used to wear when Dad was drinking. That look of someone trying to hold the world together with trembling hands. I'm sorry, she said. They're saying it's fraud, but it's fine. I can handle it. No, it's not fine, I said. You can't. But the officer was already knocking on the door. Time's up. She stood, the receiver slipping from her hand. Before she left, she turned back once. You always think I let you down, Eli, but not this time. That night, I drove aimlessly around the outskirts of St. Cloud. Every exit looked the same. Dark trees, flickering gas station signs, the occasional diner still open for truckers. My hands kept tightening on the steering wheel. She'd taken the fall for me, and I'd left her there. I pulled over outside a shuttered strip mall. The old Division Street unit still had my faded logo ghosted on the glass, Warren Heating and Air. The landlord had evicted me after I missed 2 months' rent. I thought it was clean, that I'd walked away owing nothing but shame. But if Mom's name had been on the paperwork, it meant she'd been covering my mess this whole time. I punched the steering wheel until my hand throbbed. Then I sat in silence. Headlights pointed at that cracked sign. The next morning, I called Hannah. Tell me everything. She hesitated. I didn't want to... Now. She got arrested 2 nights ago, Hannah said. Someone from the leasing company filed a complaint, said she falsified a signature on a 2018 contract. She didn't deny it, because she was covering for me. Yeah, she said quietly. I think she thought it would protect you. From what? I didn't even know they were still after me. Maybe not now, she said, but they were back then. You remember the collections letters? She paid most of them. I closed my eyes. I remembered tossing unopened envelopes into the trash. I'd been too proud to ask for help, too proud to face her. Where is she now? They said she's being held until a hearing next week. Then I'm going. When I showed up at the courthouse, the air felt too still. Mom sat at a small table in a wrinkled cardigan, hands folded like a student waiting for detention. She looked up when I entered, eyes red but calm. The judge read the charges: fraudulent signature, misrepresentation of property. Her public defender was a kid who looked younger than me. Before the judge could finish, I stood. Your Honor, she didn't... Sir, sit down. No, listen, it was me. I was the tenant. The judge's gavel hit the bench. Sir, another outburst and I'll have you removed. Mom shook her head, mouthing something I couldn't hear. Probably stop. When the hearing ended, they led her away. I caught her eye one last time. She didn't look scared, just resolved. Outside, Hannah met me on the steps. The wind cut through her coat. "She won't let you take the blame," she said. "She already told them." "For what?" "For everything." I stared at her. "What does that even mean?" "She told them she forged it alone, that you didn't know." The words hit harder than any punch. For once, I realized it. Wasn't pride that kept her silent? It was protection. The same instinct that had driven her all her life, even when it looked like abandonment, and I'd left her behind. That night, I couldn't stay home. I drove to the lake. Clear ice, under a low moon, the kind of winter scene she used to love. When we were kids, Mom used to take us skating here every January before Dad started drinking heavy. I could still hear her voice calling across the frozen water, "One more lap, Eli." I sat there until the cold stung my eyes. Then I started making calls to the leasing office, to the bank, to the county clerk. I didn't even know what I was looking for, just that I had to undo what she'd done. But every call led to the same wall. She's already accepted responsibility. By dawn, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let her spend one more night in there for something I caused. When I pulled into the courthouse parking lot again, the snow was just starting to fall. I walked inside, clutching a folder of old invoices, contracts, emails, the paper trail I'd ignored for years. The clerk looked surprised when I said I wanted to file a sworn statement. "You understand this could make you liable for the charges?" she asked. "I do." She looked at me for a long time, then handed me a form. "You can start here." I sat down, pen trembling in my hand, and wrote my name at the top. Halfway through, I stopped. Because in the middle of all that legal jargon, one phrase caught my eye. Intent to deceive. That wasn't me. I hadn't meant to deceive anyone. I'd just failed, like I always did. But Mom hadn't cared about intent. She'd just seen her son sinking and jumped into the water with him. I finished the form. When I turned it in, the clerk said, "I'll make sure it's added to her case file." That night, I called Hannah again. "She's not going to like it," she said. "I know, but maybe she'll finally understand." "I'm not doing it for that," I said. "I'm doing it because she shouldn't have to." 3 days later, I went back to visit Mom in the holding room. She looked surprised when she saw me. "You again?" she said softly. "I filed a statement," I said. "Told them it was me." Her expression didn't change at first. Then she shook her head, eyes glistening. "You shouldn't have done that. I couldn't just let you—" "You think this fixes anything?" she snapped, louder now. "Eli, they were never after you for the lease. They wanted the money back." "So what?" "So I didn't pay it," she said quietly. "Your father did." I froze. "What?" "He took a loan under my name years ago before he died. They're linking everything together." I felt like the air had gone out of the room. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked away. "Because I didn't want you to know what he did." The room fell silent except for the hum of the fluorescent light above us. The whole thing, the lease, the arrest, the blame, was tangled deeper than I ever realized. And somehow, it all still came back to family. I left that night with more questions than answers. On the drive home, I passed the old house where we grew up. The windows were boarded, the porch caved in, but I could still picture Mom on that swing, smoking quietly after dinner, pretending everything was fine. I parked across the street and sat there until dawn. Maybe I'd never understand why she always shielded us from the truth, why she thought silence was love. But sitting there, I realized something I hadn't before. She didn't take the blame to erase my guilt. She did it to give me a chance to face it. And now it was my turn. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from the courthouse. Mr. Warren, this is Officer Dalton. We received your affidavit. Please contact the clerk's office before noon to confirm your statement. The message had that clipped tone, half formality, half disbelief, that made my stomach twist. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening again, then again, trying to decide if it sounded like good news or bad. The blinds were cracked just enough for the morning light to stripe the carpet. My boots from yesterday were still by the door, one tilted, as if I'd just stepped out of it and left mid-thought. The whole apartment smelled faintly of solder and motor oil. I hadn't eaten dinner the night before. The takeout box still sat open on the counter, congealed sauce hardening around a plastic fork. I replayed her words from the night before. Your father did it, and realized something that made my hands tremble. I had spent years resenting my mother for what my father did. And now I didn't even know which lies belonged to which of them. By 10:45, I was at the courthouse again, waiting outside the clerk's office. The hallway buzzed with fluorescent lights, the kind that make every sound sharper. Heels on tile, papers sliding across desks, the low hum of conversation that always dies when you walk past. When my name was called, the clerk, a middle-aged man with square glasses, looked up from a stack of files. Mr. Warren, you filed an admission of liability yesterday? Yeah, I said. I wanted to clear things up about my mom's case. He nodded slowly, sliding my paperwork toward him. You understand this may reopen your own civil obligations, correct? I don't care. She doesn't belong in there. He studied me for a moment, then leaned back. It's unusual, Mr. Warren. She's been adamant that she alone was responsible, refused counsel at first, then asked for one only when the county insisted. That's not common. She's stubborn, I said quietly. Always has been. He gave a sympathetic half smile. Family stuff can get complicated. The hearing's set for Friday morning. If you want to testify, you'll need to inform her lawyer. I left his office with a heavy envelope under my arm and a knot in my chest. On the drive home, I kept the radio off. Every sound felt too loud. The rattle of loose change in the cup holder, the thump of the tires over expansion joints, the creak of the seatbelt when I leaned forward. At a stoplight, I saw a kid, maybe 16, arguing with his mother on the sidewalk outside a bus stop. She gestured with a grocery bag in one hand, shouting something that made him turn away, jaw tight. The light turned green, but I didn't move until someone honked behind me. When I got home, I poured a cup of coffee and finally called Hannah. Hey, she said, voice thick like she hadn't slept. They called me this morning, I said. They want me to testify Friday. You're really doing it? I have to, she sighed. You think that'll help? She's already made up her mind, Eli. You know how she is. Yeah, I said, staring at the steam curling from the mug. But maybe it's time I made up mine. That night, I couldn't stop replaying things from childhood. The nights she'd come home late from work, the fights with Dad that ended with slammed doors and muffled crying. I remembered the time she drove 3 hours in a snowstorm to bring me a part for my first car because I'd stripped a bolt and couldn't fix it myself. I'd acted annoyed when she showed up, told her she should have called first. She just smiled, hands red from the cold, and said, "You'd have told me not to come." I never realized until now that she wasn't trying to save me from trouble. She was trying to save me from becoming my father. Friday came faster than I expected. I ironed my one decent shirt, the same one I wore to Dad's funeral. Hannah met me outside the courthouse, her hair tied back, eyes tired but steady. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I'm going anyway." The courtroom smelled like dust and old paper. Mom sat at the defense table in a pale sweater, hands folded neatly. When she saw me, her expression hardened. The judge looked over her glasses. "Mrs. Warren, your son has submitted a statement claiming responsibility. Do you wish to revise your plea?" Mom didn't look at me. "No, Your Honor. I take full responsibility for the document in question." The judge frowned. "You understand the potential consequences?" "Yes." I stood before I could stop myself. She's protecting me. She always has. But this time, she shouldn't have to. "Mr. Warren," the judge said, her tone warning, "I signed the lease. The business was mine. She didn't forge anything. If her name's on it, it's because I let her." Mom finally turned toward me, eyes sharp with anger. "Eli, stop." But I didn't. "Your Honor, the company records are in that envelope. I was behind on payments. She tried to fix it." There was silence. Then the judge said quietly, "We'll review the evidence. Mrs. Warren, until then, you remain released on bond." Released. The word hit me harder than I expected. When it was over, she walked past me without a word, her shoulder brushing mine. Hannah touched my arm. "Let her cool off," she whispered, but I couldn't. I followed her out into the parking lot. "Mom!" I called. She stopped halfway to the car, turning slowly. Her breath came out in white clouds. "What were you thinking?" she said. "Do you have any idea what this could do?" "I was thinking that you shouldn't have to sit in there for me," I said. "I wasn't in there for you." "Yes, you were. You said so yourself." She shook her head. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand," I shouted, voice echoing off the courthouse steps. Her eyes filled with tears, but her tone stayed level. "If they think it was me, they'll stop digging. If they think it was you, they'll find everything else." "Everything else?" "Your father's accounts, the loan, the insurance." It felt like the ground tilted under me. "What are you talking about?" She opened her car door, but didn't get in. "Your father borrowed money against the shop in your name before he died. Used my credentials. I covered it because I thought you'd never find out." I stared at her, speechless. She finally looked up. "I wasn't taking the blame for you, Eli. I was taking it from you." That night I drove home numb. The sky was the color of lead, and snow began to fall again. Thin, steady, relentless. I didn't turn on the lights when I got inside. Just stood in the kitchen, letting the quiet swallow everything. I thought about Dad, the man who taught me how to hold a wrench, how to replace a blower motor, how to fix what's broken. He'd also taught me how to hide a lie behind a handshake. I used to tell people he was complicated. Truth was, he was selfish. But Mom, she wasn't trying to hide him. She was trying to protect what was left of us from becoming like him. And I'd hated her for it. The next few days blurred together. I went to work, but my head wasn't there. Every sound felt hollow. The hiss of a compressor, the click of a thermostat. I'd go through the motions, then sit in my truck staring at nothing for long stretches. On Wednesday night, I finally called her. She didn't pick up. I left a message anyway. "Mom, I get it now. I really do. But you can't carry this alone anymore. Please call me." I didn't expect her to, but the next morning my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Eli?" Her voice was quiet, shaky. "Hey," I said softly. "Thanks for calling. You shouldn't have gone to court." "Maybe not," I said, "but I meant what I said." She sighed. "They called. They're reopening the investigation." "What?" "Apparently your statement triggered something with the leasing company. They're sending auditors." Jesus. "I told you, Eli, sometimes silence keeps you safe." "Maybe," I said, "but it also keeps you alone." There was a long pause. "I'm coming over," she said. When she arrived, it was like stepping into another timeline. She looked smaller than I remembered from my childhood, but somehow steadier. She didn't hug me, Just walked in, looked around at the apartment, and said, "You finally got that table I liked?" "Yeah," I said. "Found it at a thrift store." She smiled faintly. "You always were cheap." We both laughed. It broke something in me, something heavy and sharp that had been sitting in my chest for years. I poured her coffee. She wrapped both hands around the mug like it was the only warm thing in the world. "So I said, "what now?" She stared into the steam. "They're going to ask questions about your father's loan. You'll need to tell them the truth." "What truth?" "That he took out insurance on the shop under your name, after the fire." I blinked. The fire was ruled accidental. She nodded slowly. "It was, but he filed 2 claims, one under his name, one under yours." "Why would he—" "To cover debts," she said quietly. "Debts I didn't know about until after he died." My chest went cold. "So all this time," she said, "I've been trying to keep them from connecting the dots. If they do, they'll think you were involved." "And you thought jail was better than that?" "I thought it was temporary." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I said, "I'm not letting you take this anymore." She looked up at me, eyes red. "You already did." The next morning, I went back to work. But every screw I turned, every pipe I soldered, felt meaningless. My hands kept trembling. When my phone buzzed around noon, I almost didn't answer. It was Hannah. "They found something," she said. "What do you mean?" "The auditors. They traced the second claim. It wasn't just Dad's signature." "What?" "It was forged," she said softly, "by someone else." The world tilted again. "Who?" "They think Mom did it." That night I drove to her place. Her porch light was off, snow piling up on the steps. I knocked until my knuckles stung. When she finally opened the door, her eyes were red and swollen. "I didn't do it," she said before I could speak. "I know," I said, "but I didn't know." "Not really." She stepped aside, letting me in. The living room smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. The coffee table was covered with stacks of mail, some opened, some still sealed. She sat on the couch, gesturing to a folder on the table. "Read it." Inside were letters, old bank records, and a life insurance policy I'd never seen before. Dad's handwriting, familiar, messy, ran across the forms. And at the bottom of one page, 2 signatures, one his, one hers. But the second one, the one marked witness, was mine, except I'd never signed it. I looked up at her. "Where did this come from?" "He kept copies in the shed," she said. "After he died, I found them. I didn't think it mattered until the auditors called." "And now?" "Now it looks like we were both in on it," she said quietly. Her voice cracked. "Eli, I swear I didn't forge your name, but someone did." My mind spun. I tried to remember that day, that week, anything about those papers. I remembered the smell of smoke, the call from the insurance company, Mom crying in the kitchen, but nothing about signatures. And yet, there it was, my name, in ink. "I'll fix this," I said. She shook her head. "You've already done enough?" But I didn't believe her. Because for the first time, I realized she wasn't just protecting me. She was drowning, and she didn't even know how to ask for help. And this time, I wasn't going to let her drown alone. The next morning, I sat in my truck outside Mom's house, engine idling, windshield fogged. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, that forged signature flashed behind my eyelids. My name, written in someone else's hand. It was neat, almost careful, but wrong in the tiny ways that mattered. The tail of the Y, the way the E curved back too clean. Whoever had written it knew my signature well enough to fake confidence, not character. Snow was falling again, thin and steady. Minnesota in February has a way of making you feel like time's been paused, every sound muffled, every color faded. But that morning, something in me was awake for the first time in years. I turned off the engine and stepped out into the cold. Mom answered the door in her robe, eyes heavy but calm. She didn't ask why I was there. She just stepped aside and said, "Coffee's on." Inside, the house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock and the hiss of the radiator. She sat at the kitchen table, pouring 2 cups. "You look like hell," she said softly. "So do you," I said. She smiled at that. Small, tired, but real. I pulled the folder from my jacket and laid it between us. "I went through every page again. There's something off about that signature." She didn't reach for it, just stared. "I told you I didn't forge it." "I believe you," I said, "but someone did, and I think I know who." Her eyes narrowed. "Eli, Dad didn't sign this alone. There's another hand in here. See the witness section? He was dead 3 days before this was dated." She froze. "I checked the death certificate," I said. So I said, "Time of death was December 16th. This document is dated the 19th. Her hand covered her mouth. "Oh my God." I nodded. "Which means someone filed this after the fact." She looked up at me, eyes wide with a fear I hadn't seen since the night Dad came home drunk and shattered a plate against the counter. "Who would have done that?" "The same person who handled his accounts after the fire," I said. "His business partner, Tom Lasky." Her breath caught. "Tom? No, he was your father's friend." "Yeah," I said bitterly. "And the one who got the insurance payout before the second claim was denied." She blinked, stunned. "How do you know that?" "I went through the statements last night. The deposit went to his account." She shook her head slowly, as if trying to push the thought away. "No, Eli, that can't. Tom wouldn't." "He did," I said, "and he used my name to make it look clean." I didn't wait for her to respond. I stood, grabbed my jacket, and said, "I'm going to see him." "Eli, wait," she called after me, voice sharp with panic. "Don't do anything stupid." "I'm not," I said, hand on the door. "I'm done being stupid." Tom's repair shop was still there, on the east side of town, a squat brick building with faded signage and an office window smeared from years of cigarette smoke. The same shop where Dad used to bring me on weekends saying, "Watch and learn, son. This is how business gets done." I parked out front and sat for a long minute, watching the snow swirl in the air. Then I went in. The bell above the door jingled. The smell hit first: oil, stale coffee, and something metallic underneath. Tom was behind the counter, heavier than I remembered, gray creeping into his beard. He looked up, frowning. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Eli Warren. Heard you finally started your own thing." "Something like that," I said. "Got a minute?" He shrugged, motioning toward a stool. "Sure. What's this about?" I laid the folder on the counter. His eyes flicked down. I caught it, the slight twitch in his jaw. "That's your dad's paperwork," he said. "Yeah. Funny thing, though, it's dated 3 days after he died." He didn't blink. "Must have been a clerical error." "And my signature," I said, tapping the page. "Looks good, huh? Almost like I actually signed it." His mouth tightened. "You saying I forged it?" "I'm saying you got that second payout," I said evenly. "And when the insurance company came sniffing around, you needed someone to take the heat." He laughed, short, forced. "You've been digging, huh? You and your mom always did love a good mystery." "This isn't a mystery," I said. "It's fraud." He leaned forward. "Careful, kid." "I'm not a kid." He smiled thinly. "You sure act like one. You think anyone's going to believe you? Your mom's already admitted to signing fake papers. The court sees you as the guy trying to clean up the family mess. I stared at him. You used her. He shrugged. She used herself, always did. That woman's been covering for everyone since the day she met your old man. I felt my hands curl into fists. You're going to fix this. Or what? He said quietly. You'll hit me. Go ahead. Give them another reason to call you unstable. The words hit harder than any punch. I turned, jaw tight, and walked out. Behind me, he called, Don't dig where you can't bury. The door slammed. I sat in my truck for nearly an hour, staring at the snow collecting on the windshield. I could hear Dad's voice in my head, something he used to say when things got messy. You clean your mess, or someone else cleans it for you. Either way, you pay. Maybe it was time I paid. I drove straight to the police station. The detective on duty, Sergeant Kim, was a woman in her 40s with dark hair tied back and a kind of patient toughness that made you want to tell the truth even if you didn't mean to. She listened as I laid it all out. Dad's fire, the insurance claims, Tom's payout, the forged signature, Mom's arrest. When I finished, she leaned back and exhaled. That's a lot. I know. She tapped her pen on the table. You're saying your father's partner filed false documents using your name? Yes. And you have proof? Enough to start, I said, sliding the copies toward her. She flipped through them, eyes narrowing. This signature's clean. Too clean. You're right. It looks traced. So you'll look into it? She nodded slowly. We'll open a fraud investigation. But Eli... She paused, meeting my eyes. If your mother signed anything herself, it could still complicate things. I don't care, I said. Just find the truth. She closed the folder. We'll be in touch. When I got back to Mom's, she was waiting by the window, still in that same robe, holding her phone like it was a lifeline. What did you do? She asked. I went to the police. She flinched. Eli... It's over, Mom, I said gently. No more secrets. She sank into the couch, eyes wet. You think the truth fixes things. It doesn't. It just opens wounds you can't close. Maybe, I said, sitting beside her, but at least they'll heal the right way. She looked at me for a long time. Then finally she nodded. 2 weeks passed before we heard back. I was at work when my phone rang. Mr. Warren, this is Sergeant Kim. We have an update. Can you come in? When I arrived, she had a small smile on her face. You were right, she said. We pulled financial records. The secondary insurance claim was filed from Tom Lasky's office computer. IP logs, signature overlays. It's a match. I exhaled, shaky. So what happens now? We'll issue a warrant, and your mother's charges are being reviewed. With this evidence, it's likely they'll be dropped. For a moment, I just stood there, stunned. All that weight, years of resentment, guilt, silence, suddenly felt lighter, though not gone. Thank you, I said quietly. She nodded. You did the right thing. I left the station and sat in my truck, staring out at the frozen parking lot. The sun was low, turning the snow orange gold. I called Mom. They cleared you, I said when she picked up. There was silence on the line, then a soft sound, half laugh, half sob. I don't even know what to say. Maybe start with you were right, I said. She chuckled through tears. Don't push it. The following week, I helped her pack up the house. She'd decided to move closer to Hannah in Minneapolis, start fresh. While boxing up old photos, I found one from when I was a kid. Me on Dad's shoulders, both of us laughing, Mom behind the camera. The edges were curled, the colors fading. But her reflection was in the mirror beside us, watching, smiling, holding everything together even then. I slipped it into her box, but later she handed it back to me. "You keep it," she said. "You're the one who finally saw the whole picture." The day she left, she hugged me at the curb. It was the first time in years we'd touched without some kind of apology between us. She smelled like peppermint gum and laundry soap. Her hands, rough and warm, lingered on my shoulders. "You remind me of him sometimes," she said softly. "The good parts." I swallowed hard. "You're the one who kept those alive." She smiled, eyes shining. "Maybe now you can forgive him." "I'm still working on forgiving you," I said. She nodded. "That's fair." Then she got in the car and drove off. A month later, I got a call from Sergeant Kim again. "Just wanted to let you know," Lasky confessed. "Said your dad asked him to file the second claim just in case, but after he died, he decided to cash it anyway. He thought no one would notice." I closed my eyes. "And Mom?" All charges dropped. When I hung up, I sat in my truck and stared out at the road for a long time. Snowmelt ran in thin lines along the gutter. The air smelled like thawing earth, cold and clean. I thought about that night I'd refused to pick up the phone, about how easy it had been to stay angry. But love, I realized, isn't clean. It's messy, ugly, buried under years of mistakes and half-truths. And sometimes, it takes breaking apart everything you thought you knew just to see what was holding it together. That evening, I drove out to the lake we used to skate on. The ice was gone now, rippling under the sunset. I took the photo from my pocket, the one with her reflection in the mirror, and set it on the dashboard. For a moment, the light caught it just right, and it looked like she was still behind the camera, still watching. "Thanks, Mom," I whispered. Then I started the truck, rolled down the window, and let the cold air rush in, clean, sharp, and alive. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.